Okay, Emile, let's take a look at this new set of essays, tickets for sports or cultural events. Let's see what you said. Experts throughout both both the developing and developed world have debated whether the money, no. Let's try this one more time. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether money, it's not even just money in general, but it's a lot of money. Okay, do you see the difference? So it's not whether we should spend money on these things or not. That's not the issue. But it's whether we should spend an excessive amount of money on these things. Okay, what they're really looking for here is an appropriate synonym for a lot of money. All right, and you haven't supplied it. So let's try it one more time. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether a great deal of money should be spent on cultural or sporting events, or if the opposite is the case. I firmly believe you don't firmly believe with a view, you support a view. This is a matter of collocation. You have to make sure your collocations are correct, that verbs are attached to the correct nouns, and so forth, okay? So I firmly support the former view. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from personal experience and there should be a the here, the Lithuanian Marketing Association, to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, fine. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that by attending you attend various events. People get an opportunity to socialize and improve their communication skills, especially in the work environment. This is largely because nowadays people are developing an isolated lifestyle due to technology. Full stop. This doesn't make sense. Get rid of factor. Take, for example, the Lithuanian Marketing Association, which spends a limited amount of money on basketball matches repeatedly. This decision is making not only to fulfill employees' interest in specific sport, but also to create an informal environment where people would be able to discuss relevant topics with colleagues or work associates. Consistent with this line of thinking is that in this way, employees become more open and closely to each other. It has become a very effective tool in reaching business success, as well as personal happiness. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that events such as sport matches could bring people together as make people more socializing. So here's the thing. You have written a lot of words. You're well over the word minimum, so that's not a problem. But what is a problem is a lot of these grammatical and lexical errors, which are creating perhaps some incoherence or at the very least a lot of imprecision. So what I want to do is read this paragraph again and correct all those grammatical errors, okay? Let's start there. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that by attending various events, people get an opportunity to socialize and improve their communication skills, especially in the work environment. This is largely because nowadays people are developing an isolated isolated lifestyle due to technology. Okay, so reading this, I see that there's a problem. Essentially because you're getting off topic. Remember what the topic is. It's spending a lot of money on these tickets. It's not whether you go to sporting events or cultural events, but it's the fact that a lot of people are spending a ton of money on them. And the question now is this good or is this bad? You're not going into that at all here. Look at what you said. You said that it's important for people to go to these events because it keeps them from being isolated. People are getting isolated because of technology. That's not the point, Emile. That's not what they're asking you, whether it's good if they go to these events or not. Nobody is questioning that, but they're questioning instead whether people should be spending a ton of money on these events, okay? Now, look at this here. You said, take for example, the Lithuanian Marketing Association, which spends a limited amount of money on basketball matches repeatedly. This decision is the grammar is absolutely wrong here. This decision not only fulfills employees' interests, not employees, but it should be S apostrophe, in the specific sport, but also creates an informal environment where people would be able to discuss relevant topics with colleagues or work associates. This is totally off topic. They haven't asked you whether these events are an opportunity to be social or not. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. The idea is it important for us? Is it necessary? Is it a positive step for us to be spending a ton of money on these events? Or is it negative for us to be spending money on these events? You have gone in a totally different direction, and you've now discussed whether it's good to go to these events in general or not, which is a totally different topic, okay? So let's move on. Consistent with this line of thinking is that in this way employees become more open and close, not closely, wrong expression here. Okay, adjective. It has become a very effective tool to reach business success as personal happiness. Oh, really? Why? Now, this is off topic. That's not the question. It's definitely irrelevant. But if you are going to say something like this, every time you assert something, Emile, you have to support it. If you're going to claim that something is true, that something is fact, you have to explain and support why it is. You didn't do that. Now, it's a detail, again, because this is absolutely off topic. You're not talking about what you're supposed to be talking about. All right? So, therefore, it is conclusively clear that events such as sport matches could bring people together by making people socialize more. I'm just trying to clean up the grammar. Still, I believe it's completely off topic. You haven't answered the question. It would be a tangential response. Let's move on. On the other hand, although there is a case for socializing, what cannot be overstated? What? What is the this referring to? You're supposed to be referring back to something you stated in the previous paragraph. So this sentence is absolutely incorrect. It's incoherent. This is because a great number of events can be overrated and it leads to increasingly more expensive. All right, what is the it? It leads. What is it? You talked about events plural. Doesn't make sense. For instance, if a new artist came to society with a false message about himself and asked to pay, who to pay? People to pay $250 for his art exhibition, we would probably believe him and become very interested in what he has to show. It should not be forgotten that there are many untested, grammar. There is much, not untested, that's a wrong word, unresearched maybe, or what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of unfounded claims. I think this is what you're trying to say. In society, and it is up to all of us to decide what is worth it or not. Consequently, it is possible to state beyond doubt that citizens have to be aware before paying for events. Okay, again, the grammar is so off here and the language is so off that the message is not clear. I understand what you're trying to say. I think you're trying to say that we have a lot of people with whom there's a lot of buzz. Okay, there's a lot of buzz around them, and so we might be tempted to pay a lot of money, but a lot of this is unfounded, and so we have to be a little more discerning customers in that respect. But again, you can see that I took a lot of leeway in making the conclusions that I did. This is not at all what you wrote, so you absolutely have to clear this up. So, from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that advantages of sporting or cultural events outweigh disadvantages. Again, that was not the topic. The topic was not whether there are advantages of these or not, but whether there are advantages to paying a lot of money for these events or not. It is predicted that people's interest in such leisure activities will increasingly grow in importance. Okay, so Emile, clearly there are a ton of problems with this essay. There are problems with the task achievement. There are problems with the language you used. So I really want you to work on this a little bit to make sure that it's an essay that gets you the score you need, okay? Because there are problems with it. We spent a ton of time on it, however, so now I really want to go into this. You're fine with your word count, so that's good. This is the one about rainfall. Let's look at it. Okay, so let's take a look at your line graph now. The line graph shows the amount of rainfall in 3 different countries throughout 2018. England had ups and downs, but it was the rainiest country, which had fluctuation between 75 ml to 125 ml over the year. All right, I don't really like this expression, had ups and downs. This is where you should have used the word fluctuation. So let's try it again. England had fluctuations, but generally was the rainiest country with levels between 75 and 125 ml over the year. That would have been a better way to say this. Even, I don't know why you have even, but the period from January to February showed, not has shown, a steady decline in Scotland. I don't know why we're talking about Scotland suddenly. Comma, clearly this country reached its peak in March and then rose again to the level above 100 ml. Wales had the most rainy period in July, while the other countries had slightly lower amounts of rain in the same month. The figure for the dry season, you say the figure and then are, so it should be the figures, plural, for the dry season are shown in February and April in Scotland and Wales, respectively. That makes 0 sense. I don't understand that. Almost all countries had over the 50 ml of rainfall over the year, except Scotland, which had lower than 50 ml in 2 months, and Wales. All right. I'm sorry. I'm having a really hard time understanding this. Let's look at your overview and then we'll talk about it. Overall, there was no clear trend due to constant fluctuations through 2018. However, the most rainy country was England. Well, that's good. You got your overview right. But now we absolutely have to analyze this data to see what you need to talk about. You see, the thing is that a lot of people look at this line graph and they get overwhelmed because they just don't know what to look at. It's really far easier than you think it is. Believe me. So, what I want you to do, first of all, is think of this. Hang on, let me actually make it a little bigger. Let me see if I can do that. Hold on. What I want you to do is every time you see one of these chronological line graphs or bar charts or whatever, is I want you to think about it as a story. When someone is telling you a story, what do you always want to know? You want to know the beginning of the story, the end of the story, of course, and then some of the key information in that story. Okay, not every single piece of information. Like, for example, if your friend went to go see a movie, you don't want to know every single detail of the movie your friend saw, but you do want to know the key points, which are usually the beginning, the end, and some important plot points in the middle. Okay, that's exactly what happens with a graph like this. The key points are January for all 3 countries, December for all 3 countries, and then those highs and those lows in the middle. So, what does that mean? That means for England, you want this figure, you want this figure, you want this low, and then look at this. It doesn't have one peak, it has 1, 2, 3. So, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about 1 month, 2 months, 3, 4, 5, and you're done with England. Then, you're going to do exactly the same thing with Scotland. You've got this high here. This is the highest month of any country. So 1, 2, okay, 3, and also 4, 5. Do you see that? So the beginning, the end, the low, and the 2 highs because it has 2 peaks. Take a look at Wales. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is really interesting with Wales, this plateau here. It's the only country that has a plateau. So you can see that in the end, you're only going to mention 15 points. And while it might sound like a lot, it actually is not. It's very easy to do this in a very brief kind of way. I assure you of this, okay? So that's what you need to talk about. I feel like the way you analyzed it was really random. You didn't focus on the key points of this. I can't really say it was a particularly well executed task 1 because you didn't focus on some of the key points here, okay? Also missing for me was some of the appropriate vocabulary and grammar for a task 1. I definitely want you to revise that. Take a look at some of the lexis that we use for task 1. If you need any suggestions, we're happy to help, okay? So I want you to go ahead and correct these. I want you to return them back to us corrected and come back with another set of essays. Good luck.